Welcome back to another episode of CharlaFootball. I am your host, Gerardo Jerry Tavares. I'm accompanied by my amazing, handsome co-host right here, Tomas Estrada. How you doing, bro? I see you with the fresh cut.
Good, bro. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good.
No
Um,
need that first
I
cut.
mean, could be better, bro. Could be better. Honestly, we're coming in watching the Nations League final. It was an extremely disappointing result. If you're a Mexico fan, obviously I'm Mexican American, so are you as well. So it's like a bittersweet moment. It's nice to see the U.S. doing so well at the international level, and you see like the amazing prospects that they're putting out into the world of football. But it's like the Mexican national team just they're stuck and they're not growing, and you're seeing that in in the Nations League, for example. But you're seeing that like as you go deeper into different tournaments. But we'll get into that. We'll get into the results of the final. Obviously, the first thing that we have to look at is what they did to get there. You know, there was a lot of different sensations, a lot of different feelings before reaching the final. Mexico were praised for their performance against Panama. So I say let's start there. Let's talk about that Mexico performance against Panama where they won 3-0. What were your feelings going into that match before and then after the match?
My feelings going into that match was, Panama came off some really good results against Costa Rica, and historically Costa Rica is the third best team in our area. So it was just let's see what they have because we did come off beating them in that final
Mhm.
in SoFi Stadium where we beat them 1-0. But
Remind me who scored in that final?
Santi Jimenez.
Anyways, continue.
But I still had my doubts of this Mexican side because versus big teams they compete. They compete. They tied to Germany. They've tied. I mean, Ghana. They beat Ghana, but it was just a sensation of I hope they lose when I seen those lineups come out because you have Ochoa in goal and you have Henry Martin starting. You have a new face Quinones starting, which Quinones I have nothing against. It's just that I don't have anything against him as a person, but I have it against the federation where it's like a population of 130 million people and it's an estimated population of 70 million Mexican Americans. So really, you're looking at 200 million possible, candidates in for an 11-man roster, and you can't complete that. Like, how is it that you have one of the most populous country in terms of like Hispanic football, but you can't take out a strong 11? Like, why is that? Obviously, we know why. It's a long, long answer, but overall, I was just hoping that Mexico lost to Panama, just because of the disaster would be, and out of disaster, usually there's reformation, but we went through a disaster last summer. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, and we see the same thing going on, and it's going to continue until there's serious change. And unfortunately, it takes results like the one today where Mexico lost 2-0 versus the States for maybe there's a shout for change. But realistically, when we've been in the situation before, you covered up with a few wins. Like that's kind of what happened with the Mexico Panama game. It was a 3-0 win, everything good. They came in from winning the Copa Oro in the summer, and it's like everything's okay. Jimmy Lozano's the guy. And I'm not saying that he's not the guy. He's an incredible coach. He led the U23 Olympic squad to a bronze medal, which is commemorable. But at this, like, when it comes to preparing for the Copa America, which is going to be this summer, and you're looking at the World Cup in 2026, which you're going to be hosting, and you're going to be like the eyes are on you. Like you, obviously, you want to compete at the highest level. You're going to be competing against some of the best teams in all of the world, and you want to make a name for yourself in your country, and the States is also your country in general. There's so many Mexican Americans here. I'm sure any games that are going to be played in the States, you're going to be seen as the you're going to have that home advantage because of all the Mexican Americans in the States. But yeah, I mean, in the Mexico Panama game, they won 3-0. Like I said, they covered the patch, and the sensations, the feelings after the game was like, okay, like maybe they're gonna play with more confidence, play a little bit more freely. Like you kind of see maybe they weren't favorites against the States, but they definitely seem like you're going to put a better performance than you have in the past 5 years. Because keep in mind that Mexico had not beaten the United States in like 5 years since 2019, where they won 3-0. So it's like there was a little bit of that sensation where like, okay, maybe something different might happen in this game. But again, you see the lineups, you see the tactics, you hear about the tactics throughout the media. A lot of people were saying that the head coach was going to go in with this idea of like letting the states play with the ball, let them have the initiative, and then we're going to hit them on the counter. And you just never saw that. You never really saw it. You didn't have the ball. You didn't hit them on the counter. Like, I don't know what the idea was.
Yeah, and I do have a problem with that formation. If you're gonna want to use a formation where you have a low block and you're defensive in the, let's say in the mm, like from the midfield coming forward, because you don't really want to give them like, you don't want to be three-fourths of field where you give them so much space, which is what happened to Mexico. But a formation where you want to be able to still have defensive control, where where maybe they have the ball but they're not penetrative to you towards you. It needs to be a 3-5-2 or a 4-4-2, because in the 3-5-2 with your wing backs, you have time to bring back them two as the right backs, and for the center backs to tuck in and have something solid in the back. But I mean, you're using a 4-3-3 to defend. Like, that's not gonna work. You don't have the numbers in the midfield. You're really on a player for player. And if you want to use I mean, if you want to use like a player for player system, the US is gonna build right around you.
Yeah,
You have
because
to have the more numbers.
player by player, US has way more quality than Mexico, and this is like one of the first times where it's been like that. I mean, if you look at the rosters, the United States only had two players from their respective league, the MLS. Everybody else was European-based players.
Yeah, for sure. And that's just the lack that there is in Mexico right now. Your best player in Europe is on your bench.
Yeah,
And I
that
just
was
don't understand that, because Jimmy Lozano came out with his lineup post Diego Coca before he was announced. And they asked him for center forward depth, who would he use? And he said this. He said he would have Santiago Jimenez because he is a young, promising player who can play today, who could give you results today. On his bench, he would have J. Macias because he's an up and coming player who may be able to give you a result, who may be able to break through. And then you have Santi Munoz, which was a player that was recently came back from Newcastle. He didn't have the best performance, but he believed in his development, that he was going to be able to develop into something, which is really what we need. In hence of it being last year, looking towards to this coming up Copa America and the World Cup that's coming in 2 years. And then now it's just, why is Henry Martin there? He wasn't a thought in your whole process, in your whole scheme. You didn't even mention him, when you brought out with what you would do. So why is he there?
Mhm.
Then you look at the left wing, Alexis Vega. He was last 2 years ago. He was a promising player, so I get why you put him there. But you have players like Diego Lainez, Roberto Alvarado, which I really don't see a problem with. Right now, Chuky's starting your left wing, but he runs a lot. He has those breakthrough moments where he catches the defense unaware, or he just catches them like off guard. But Diego Lainez, by talent, is better than Chucky. Maybe he's not as fast as him, but he's better than Chucky. And Roberto Alvarado is better than Chucky as well in the sense of crossing. He has one of the highest assist rates in Liga MX. And
I
I
think
know
Joe
we need more players in
Mixon.
Europe. I know we need more players in Europe, and we should play the players in Europe. But these two players, Diego Lainez and Roberto Alvarado, if they get to Europe, they'll be able to grow better than Chucky Lozano over there right now.
Mhm.
I mean, even you look at your right wing, he had Sendejas in his depth, which Sendejas is a solid player. Sendejas is a player that in 1 or 2 years he'll be in Europe if the Liga MX clubs will
Allow
facilitate. Yeah, if they allow it. Because we had Chiquito Sanchez saying today, he was in an interview for TUDN, and they asked him, "What is the problem with the Mexican national team today?" And he literally just said that all they need, that they have players, but those players need to develop in Europe, and the club needs to allow these players to leave to Europe Chiquito Sanchez having a current rejection from Pachuca, not allowing him to leave to Toulouse, which is based out in France in Ligue 1.
And Feyenoord as well. I saw in one of the reports
And
that Feyenoord
Feyenoord prior
should.
to Toulouse. And Feyenoord prior to Toulouse, he could have been with Santi Jimenez right now. These teams don't allow their best players to leave. Look, Chiquito Sanchez is a player that's starting for La Selección. He needs to be able to develop in big games. Play those crazy European schedules where you're playing 2 to 3 games a week. He needs to be able to do that. So when he comes over here, it's like a piece of cake. It's
Mhm.
easier. Obviously not a piece of cake. Nothing's easy, but you're just used to playing at that intensity and so frequently.
I agree. That's why I don't understand like when you saw the roster, even though they didn't win against Panama, but you see the roster that they put out the starting 11. You see similar names that have been around the selection for years, like Ochoa. And while he did put in a good performance, I mean, it's still a disgrace that he at 39 years old he's looking for his sixth World Cup. Like you have to at some point you have to move forward. And when are we going to do that? When are you going to let the younger players shine? You have good talent in the goalkeeper area, like you have Angel Malagon.
Yeah, I mean, look at Malagons. Look what he's done with Club America. I mean, we've been talking about this. We need more young players in Europe. If there's young players starting for a team to what Mexico was used to known for, it used to be known for, which was to have good young players starting in La Selección. If you have a player like Malagon, of course European players are European teams are going to be interested in him,
Hmm.
especially if instead of Ochoa in that friendly versus Germany, you had Malagon in there. They would be saying like, like they've got a good solid keeper down in Mexico. But even when those big European clubs come, it's still a problem because they want to sell the players for 7, 8 million when their quality is really like 2.5 million, and they could go to Argentina or Brazil and get a player for the same price that they're looking for, which is 2.5 million, and in Mexico they want to sell them for 7 to 8.
Hmm.
It just makes no sense.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate side when you start heading into like the upper levels of the federations in Mexico. But just looking at what we see on the field today, I mean, against Panama, it was a good game. You can't deny that. Like after you kind of just felt like, okay, maybe against the United States we'll do a little bit better. But before we
Um,
get into the final, and then that this,
Honestly, let me talk about that panel game for a second. For me, in my eyes, as a person who's used to seeing how Mexico plays against Central American teams and against the U.S. and how they've competed, beat or lost, um, it was a terrible game versus Panama. And I'm gonna say it because of this. Because if you look in how slow that Mexico was in transition versus Panama, I mean Panama was able to not get a lot of shots off directly on goal, but just what they were able to do were they had a couple close calls on goal. They had one goal that was called offsides. I mean, for me, to what I believe, Panama was too. It was too easy for Panama to get in Mexico's final third, and
mhm,
I had the idea that if it was the U.S. was scoring those 2 goals that Panama had,
I
and
agree.
that's exactly what happened today. I mean, you see that mid-range shot that Ochoa blocks versus Panama, and you see Tyler Adams burying a banger today.
Yeah, and it's not like it was top left or like so close to the post that
No,
everyone's looking at it like, okay, Ochoa couldn't have done anything. And most people are saying Ochoa should have done better. At that level, if you're one of the best keepers in Mexico, you're considered because you're starting. Like you should be doing at least like he even got a hand to it. If you saw like the replay, he
yeah,
got a hand to it, but it wasn't a strong hand. He hit it with like his 3 fingers, his top 3 fingers.
and the thing is that it's also this prensa, these reporters from Mexico, the Televisa reporters, the TUDN reporters. TUDN was saying that 2014 Ochoa would have blocked that to give him some time. Ochoa will be back. It's not 2014. It's 2024. You're talking about 10 years later, and you still have the same keeper in goal, which would be okay if he was Ter Stegen. if he
Or
was
Neuer.
or Neuer.
But you even
That's
see,
fine.
like, I mean, Neuer, he's not even playing no more. Ter Stegen started the game against Germany, for Germany, sorry. But yeah, they just hold on to these players, and the only reason I can really think of to keep them around is like, yeah, experience and leadership. But if that's your excuse as to why you're gonna keep him around, then just throw him on the bench. He doesn't need to be starting every game, especially when it's a tournament that's not like it's not the most important tournament in the world. Like, it's for preparation. This tournament is exactly for that. So then use the people that you should be preparing for that tournament for. Like, use Malagon, use Santi Jimenez. And after the match, Jimmy Lozano said that the United States have more quality because they have players in Europe, but you're leaving your top European player, the best European player, probably out of, if you combine all the squads, he's the best one,
Literally,
arguably.
if you come, it's crazy because I mean, from both teams, from both sides, he has the most goals in Europe, whether it's Mexico or U.S. or all of North America or from North to all of Central America. They'd want a Santi Jimenez to be able to start for their team. Except, why doesn't he start for Mexico? Why is he not starting?
He's good enough to start in the Champions League. He's good enough to start in the Europa League against Roma, against Ajax, scoring a hat trick. But he's not good enough to play against the States.
He debuts versus Lazio, scoring a double, but you don't want to debut him in the CONCACAF Nations League. You wait till the last 25 minutes when the game is done in the final.
Right? Because he didn't see a single minute against Panama.
This is
And you were winning 3-0 like in the 60th minute. Like, give him some time at least. If I don't know. It's just questionable things that
and for me, sorry, we're going a little bit up and down, but for
yeah.
me, in that goalkeeper position, Malagon, you can't say, oh, Malagon had a terrible matchup against Honduras. He didn't. He blocked two penalties. He got us to this semifinal versus Panama. Why would you bench him? He won. He won that position to be able to be allowed to be the starting keeper for La Selección Mexicana. And any coach in the world knows this. Any coach with a decent brain knows this. That if your starting player gets injured and the sub comes on and he does great, you keep him. He's the one in the moment. Let's say if Malagon was as good as Ochoa, which I don't believe that. I believe Malagon is miles ahead of Ochoa. And not only is he miles ahead of Ochoa, but whatever. For this reference, we'll say that they're at the same level. Malagon is so much younger than him.
Mhm.
His ceiling is so much higher. Ochoa already reached what he's reaching, and I honestly think he's declining.
Everyone sees that.
Everybody sees his decline, but him and but La Federación Mexicana.
Yeah, because
Tell me
he's so marketable. And I mean, you can't deny that he is a marketable player. He's the reference. When you think of Mexico, if you're abroad, you think Ochoa because of the saves that he's come up with throughout his younger years. And I'm sure if you're like another team and you're like, oh, this guy's still playing, like Ochoa's still starting for them,
literally,
like you're probably thinking it's madness at that point. You're like, well, how old is he?
I've been at so many carne asadas where like I'm there with my friends, talking and everything, and then I always have that one friend that we always have a Mexican friend that likes baseball more, that likes basketball more. They'll come
Mm.
to the party and they'll be like, obviously they know who Ochoa is. Like, Ochoa's still starting. He's like, he's been starting since I was a kid. And then it's like it's crazy because I mean 2014. How old was I in 2014? I was 11. I was 11, bro. I wasn't even in middle school yet,
I was 13 that year of the World Cup.
and he's still starting. For what reason? He's the best goalie in the world or something? He's not. He's the most scoring active goalie right now. 1,000 plus goals. Is that really what he wants to be remembered for?
Yeah, and in this moment, because he hasn't given it up at the right time, his reputation is only gonna get tarnished.
I mean,
Like as a player, at some point, you just have to know when it's your time. Like Andres Guardado did it, saying that okay, it's not my time for the selection. Give it to the younger guys, Hector Moreno as well. Like they recognize that they're not at the peak of their ability, that they can't contribute anymore at the highest level. They can still play. I'm not saying that they can't play. Play
yeah.
in your league or play in a mid table team abroad. That's fine. But when it comes to your national team, you need to have the best 22, best 24, in your whole nation. And if you're still up there at that big age, then you shouldn't.
You
You're
shouldn't.
just doing it for pride at that point.
There should only honestly be like an age gap or something where it's like the Olympics, but instead of making it like making the cap at 30 and like two players that are over 30 or something like that. But
Yeah,
because
I
at
don't
that
know,
point,
but
there's very few players who are over the age of 33 that actually contribute something to the national teams. And
yeah,
off
the
of the
only
top,
ones I can even like think of the top of my head is probably like Luka Modric,
look
or
at Roger.
Messi,
Yeah, that's it.
or Messi. Like
To
other
find
than
two
that,
one national team is crazy.
yeah.
It'd be crazy.
Because when it comes to national team, you need to have your young prospects. You have to give them the chance. And I mean, anyways, but a team that is doing that well, obviously, is the United States. They beat Mexico today 2-0, dominated in every facet of the word and in the game. But that wasn't exactly the same thing that you saw in the semifinal against Jamaica, where they scored the fastest goal ever concede, or no, they scored. They had conceded the
The fact
fastest goal ever in their history in this century. In the first, I think it was like the 30th second where Jamaica scored, and they gave them some. They gave them something to hold on to, and they did just that up until like the last play of the game. It was the if the Jamaica defenders had kicked the ball out, the referee would have blown the whistle. But due to an unfortunate event where he accidentally nodded into his own net. The game went into extra time, and that's where the U.S.'s quality obviously showed because the Jamaica defenders and players were all exhausted for defending their lives for 90 minutes, basically.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people talk about the U.S.'s improvement, and I see it. I see it against Mexico. I see it in these big games, in these finals against Mexico versus Canada. But why does the U.S. always struggle against a subpar? Well, not sorry, it's a disrespectful term, but a subpar team to who they are. The U.S. has so much quality on the field, and you look at this Jamaica side, who were essentially playing their bench. I'm not gonna say their B team because it was their bench.
Yeah, because they were missing six
We
key
were,
players.
we were missing six key players, and some of these were Premier League level talent. They
Yeah, you
actually
had
started in the Premier League. Yeah, Leon
Michael
Bailey,
Michael Antonio, Leon Bailey,
Leon Bailey.
Damari Gray.
I mean, these players
The
were.
list goes on.
The list goes on. I mean, the other three players, they're solid players. They play so well together, and you've seen that in you see that every time. I don't know if you've seen their trainings, how sometimes they'll tweet, like this is the chemistry that's here in Jamaica, the Reggae Boys account, and they just look so well together. And the US plays their bench and essentially advanced out of luck.
That's what
I
it
don't like
was.
I don't like using that term, but
It was luck at the end
it
of the
was
day.
luck at the end of the day. They created a lot of opportunities going forward, but they just weren't able to capitalize themselves. The Jamaican center back had to capitalize for them, and this worries me because I mean, as Mexico fans, we were used to this. We were used to like that 2010, that 2014, where you would compete versus teams like Germany. You would compete versus teams like Brazil, and you would compete with these big teams. And then you'd play like who would I give a good reference for?
Just a team of lower
You
quality,
play
and
like Sweden. That 2018 World Cup. You beat Germany, and then you play Sweden, and you lose 3-0 to Sweden after beating Germany 1-0.
yeah,
And that could just be like a reference to maybe this could happen to the U.S. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully, I'm wrong, because I do want to see the U.S. do well. But they just need to do better versus teams that are under them, because it's like when a team comes out with a chip on their shoulder, like Jamaica did. It's kind of like the U.S. doesn't play to their
they dropped
level.
to their level. They
They
dropped to
drop
their
their,
level.
they drop to their level, and that just creates so many problems because versus Mexico, it's like the game goes like this. Mexico kind of like has a little bit of momentum because of the fans. The U.S. plays to their level, and then they just keep going. They just keep growing.
Yeah,
And versus Jamaica, you just don't see that. You're like, oh, now the U.S. is gonna take off. Oh, now the U.S. is gonna take off. Oh, now the U.S. is gonna take off.
they never did. They never
They
did.
never
None of the
did.
players really showed up. The only player that I saw really step up was
Reina.
hold on, I'm gonna pause it. And of course, a player that you have to praise is Gio Reyna. He's one of those players that makes a difference. And it's funny, like the whole story behind him, like being left out of or not seeing a single minute in the World Cup. Greg Berhalter, of course, had problems with him, but now he's the one that kind of essentially saved his job in that game where the U.S. really struggled against Jamaica. They didn't really see much change until he came on.
Yeah, I mean for sure. And I mean Gio Reyna's a talented player. We've known that. We've seen clips of him since he was like 16, 17, playing at Borussia Dortmund. But I really don't have anything else to say about him. He's just a solid player. He's there at key moments. He has the physique to compete at that level. Obviously,
Mhm.
he's shown it. And I honestly, this might be a hot take, but I think Gio Reyna is the best player on the U.S. men's national team
Yeah,
because you could talk about players like Pulisic. Like Pulisic is a great left winger for AC Milan, but Gio Reyna is the one that gets him through.
yeah.
And today Gio Reyna is the one that scores, well, seals the game technically. You
Mhm.
know, it's a easy, you could argue it's an easy side for Ochoa, I would say as well. But he scores it. He does it. He shoots it. He takes his chance. It goes in. Give him his credit.
Yeah, and you saw the same thing where he was able to create two opportunities out of nothing in the game versus Jamaica. He's essentially the one that's, I don't want to say saved Berhalter's job, but there would have been a lot of backlash if they had fallen short against Jamaica. And there, I mean, there still was backlash, even though they had 1-3-1 in the 120 minutes played. A lot of people did not like the way he played, and it's just funny that the players that in his mind weren't probably going to make that starting 11 and technically didn't, were the ones that kind of saved him and started the next game for Mexico and against Mexico in the final. Haji Wright as well, another one that you have to bring up because the story behind him is that he was on his way to Dubai. Obviously, he wasn't called up. He's a striker. I think he plays winger for Coventry City in the championship. He
Yep.
had just scored in the FA Cup quarterfinals against Wolves, and he had sealed it, won the game for them. And now he's going to go on to play the FA Cup semifinal against Manchester United, and to not even be considered for the Nations League. But then last minute, um, Greg Berhalter calls him when he's about to head into his flight on a vacation with his family to Dubai. And of course, he's going to take that call because who wouldn't take that national team call up? And he's also essentially the one that saved his Berhalter's job because he scored the two goals.
Yeah, I mean, Haji Wright does his job. He's a striker. He should score those two goals. Give him his praise. He deserves his praise for those two goals against Jamaica. He saves Berhalter's job. But
Now that's the hot take. I don't know. Like, do you think he saved his job?
I mean, of course, if you're knocked out by Jamaica in the CONCACAF Nations League, which is a utterly the competition that's only been won by the U.S. It's literally the only competition that they've won. No other team has won it in CONCACAF. There's been three editions with this one, and no other team has won it but the U.S. And in the past the 2 summers prior to this one, sorry, the 3 summers prior to this one, where the CONCACAF Nations League has been played, the U.S. always sends their A team.
Overall, do you think that Haji Wright and Gio Reyna saved Berhalter's job?
I mean, for sure, 100%. Without them, you don't get past Jamaica. And if you get past Jamaica, you probably wouldn't have gotten past Mexico.
Mhm.
And I just think that, this U.S. team, at least for this tournament, was saved by their individual play, which is something that they won't be able to be saved by in the Copa America. Because you got teams like Brazil or better individuals. Teams like England, I mean, sorry, like England, sorry, Argentina. Sorry, I was thinking about the rivalry, Argentina versus England. But so you got teams like Argentina, Colombia, who have better individuals, and I just think that the individual play isn't going to cut it for you if you're the U.S. At least for the Copa America, you need to have a stronger system because I mean we've seen in the friendly versus Germany where they play a team against a similar system, but just with better individuals, they waltz right by them. But yeah, Haji Wright definitely saved Berhalter's job in companion with Gio Reyna.
Yeah, because you have to think about it when it comes to this final where they won 2-0. Um, you saw Gio Reyna put in an absolutely like class performance, getting a goal, obviously, so he's on the score sheet. But besides that, I mean, he was dropping deep, receiving the ball, trying to make things happen from the midfield. Because I mean, basically, that's where Mexico was letting them play. They were
Yeah,
just
I mean,
giving, they let them play.
he completely aniquiló, how do you say, annihilated Chiquito Sanchez in every aspect.
Hmm.
Chiquito, that's a drop back. He couldn't. When Chiquito wanted to build out, he couldn't. Just Gio Reyna was always there, and he was just
It's far
so,
superior.
so
It's just
good at
far
his
superior.
position. He was. It's not even far superior. There's things. There's a lot of players who are superior, but they're, how do I say, they're not as intense. Or they're not as like on you. They're not as like persistent. But Gio Reyna is, not only is he superior to Chiquito Sanchez, but he's he's a pest. He pokes, he bites, he's always there. He's always on your back. He has that intensity where it's just annoying. And I've played against players like that, and I think, well, they're just so annoying. But when you have those players on your team, you look and you think, man, this guy's just always over. He's always right next to me. He's always over the place. Like 1 second he's over there chasing down the ball. Next second you're about to receive the ball and he's right on you.
Hmm.
And it's just so. I mean, playing players like Gio Reyna is so annoying. So annoying. And I know what Chiquito Sanchez feels. And if you're Chiquito Sanchez, you're probably thinking, I have to develop way more because here comes a player who has similar play styles. If you know who Chiquito Sanchez is, offensively, he plays similar to Gio Reyna. He's a chance creator. But Gio Reyna is just on another level. And you could see that through the European experience that he has built up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that's the difference between the level right now. It's just that some
Yeah.
players are developing in Europe and others aren't. I mean, we go to the First Nations League and the U.S. beats Mexico 3-2. Where you think like, they beat them 3-2. Maybe it would have been. Maybe you could have even said at the time, oh, it was luck. Then you get knocked out in the semifinal, 3-0. Then now you're at your reality. I mean, last summer we thought the FMF had reached their reality, but they really haven't. There has to be more change, and you see that in how the Mexico fans start like just yelling. How do I say this? Yelling the chant that
The
we're not
homophobic
allowed
chat,
homophobe.
which
Well, it's
we'll,
not
we'll
real.
get into.
That's
You
the thing.
can't
Yeah,
argue. It is a homophobic chant. We can't really argue it. The word in itself is a homophobic
it's
slur.
homophobic in the term that of what the word means, but it's not really used to describe gay people. It's used to say like, how do I say, the word is invented in the Chivas versus Atlas, where the Atlas fan base is mad at the Atlas team because they feel that they're playing subpar, that they're not really trying. So the word in itself, in the Mexican culture, it means, like, well, we can't say the word obviously, but everybody here that's listening, I know you know what I'm talking about. But in the world of football, it usually meant that you were soft, that you were playing subpar. And I see how it is an insult, but that's where the term comes from. That's the
Yeah,
history of the word. And it is wrong, but these fans are using that word now in term to switch it to FMF because they know that FMF gets penalized for them using the word. And everybody here paid a ticket for over $50, some even over $100. And all these YouTube influencers, which there's a lot of Mexican American YouTube influencers paying $4,000 to $5,000 for uh what do you call it, a palco? What's that? Sorry, the word
sweet.
for
Like a
a
sweet.
suite, for a suite. And I mean, these fans are really just tired. They want the FMF penalized. They want these directors out because really we've been wanting them out since it's about 2 3 years ago, since even before the World Cup, where we
Yeah.
saw what players were selected, and it's just terrible. I mean,
Yeah,
I've
because
never
that's,
really.
that's what's funny about this game is that there's really nothing to talk about within the game itself because the US was just so clear.
Yes, for sure. I mean, they were so clear. I mean, yeah,
But
and
yeah,
then you just
my bad. Let me
sorry.
get into it. It's just unfortunate that the main topic of the match isn't even like the quality of play from Mexico, but it's more so the fans, the Mexican national team. I mean, the Mexican national team fans and how they reacted when they're coming and they're losing 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, the US was just superior in every aspect today. I mean, from player by player, from just the way the team was managed. Maybe even the coach was superior. Maybe his tactics were superior, or maybe the players just saved them again. But I mean, just the way that they were able to build around Mexico. I mean, I've never seen a North American team that was able to build around Mexico so easily. But I did see it against Panama, where maybe they didn't do it as frequently as the US, but the fact that they did it worried me. And it, I mean, I'm a Mexico fan, but I'm glad they lost today. I wanted them to lose against Panama. I know I'm repeating that, but it just shows the reference how that we want. I. It's contradictory because as a kid, I always wanted like Mexico, see them like do well, do good. But now I just realized like the reality of what it is and just the mafia that there is behind Mexican football that controls everything, pulls the strings like a bunch of like if we were a bunch of puppets, essentially.
Mhm.
You just look at this and you think, hopefully they lose money. And you see that with the homophobic chant because the whole time that there was 0-0 silence, just watching the game, just a bunch of people watching the game. Essentially, the fans are using it more as against the federation tactic, where it's
Yeah.
like you get penalized for this, we're gonna say it so you get penalized unless you
I,
start
like, I
getting.
never saw it as like they were trying to say it towards a player or to intentionally hurt somebody, like anyone in the crowd. It wasn't done like that. It was because they know that it's gonna hurt the pockets. At the end of the day, that's what they're trying to do because they know that out of playing the games in the States and the hundreds of thousands of fans that are showing up, paying hundreds of dollars just to get a ticket, and then you see your national team performing like this. Because keep in mind that it was probably like 90 or like 85% Mexican national team supporters in the stadium, and then the other 10-15% were US fans,
Yeah,
but so obviously all that money, um you want it being produced on the field. Like you want to see that, like all the money that you're putting into the federation, you want to see that in the field. But if you're not seeing it on the field, then of course you're going to be upset, and that's the way they're reacting. I'm not saying that it's the right way to react, but it's going to hopefully maybe do something. Like I said, it does affect the national team pocket. It does affect these higher levels money, and I mean the first time that started was in 2016, where the chance finally reached FIFA, and people were like in the higher ups were complaining about this, and FIFA, for the first time, had fined the Mexican Federation about I think like about around $35,000. And now recently, like they had closed stadiums for World Cup qualifying for the 2018 and 2022 World Cups, and even for Olympic qualifying, they closed the stadiums for fans, so the fans couldn't enter, and obviously money isn't generated through that. And
yeah,
then um, I think just last month they imposed over $100,000 in fines to the Mexican Federation. So I can only imagine the kind of fine that they're going to probably receive after this one. Or I guess we'll find out within the next couple weeks or so. But
yeah,
I mean, that's just what they have to do.
yeah. And reiterating on what you said, it isn't the how do I say this? It's not right that they say this word, but essentially it's said all over Mexico. Not culturally, but it's just the word that's used. Not with a lot of weight, but I mean, sadly, that's the only way where the fans can directly affect the federation
Hmm.
because they can. I mean, we saw it last summer where, they came out with all these bright ideas. Oh, we're gonna bring a new coach. We're gonna bring new ideas. We're gonna bring new players, and you just see to what's the only difference? I mean, they took in out 2 to 3 players who we told them were past their prime, and that's it. I mean, why is Ochoa still here? Why are all these? Why is Luis Romo your sub? Your direct center defensive mid sub? You have
Hmm.
Marcel Ruiz. You have Jordi Cortizo. You have all these up and coming Mexican midfielders who don't play in Europe yet, but they've shown the quality of playing in Liga MX. Give them a chance on the national team, and facilitate them an exit towards Europe. Why do you want to hold on to these players in your lower divisions, keeping them in Liga MX? It just makes no sense to me, and it's just frustrating as a Mexico fan because we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and you have to commemorate with the things that the U.S. are doing, and I think and something that a lot of people were saying after the game is that the Mexican national team and federation has to copy that style. Maybe not exactly because money runs differently through the U.S. than it does in Mexico, but we have the talent, and it's not like we're a third world country either, where we don't have the resources. Like we have enough resources to make a change, but at this point, it's on the people if they want to see that change.
I mean,
And looking forward, especially looking forward to the future, like now, forget about the Nations League. The U.S. won that. Well, I wouldn't say clear, like they were the clear dominant team throughout the tournament because obviously they struggled against Jamaica. But when you're looking as a whole, they were rightfully the winner of the tournament. But moving forward to the Copa America, like what are your expectations for this U.S. men's national team, and then what are your expectations for the Mexican team?
for this U.S. men's national team, my expectations are looking at this from a standpoint where I developed in the U.S. and seen the good thing that they've done here. All the people, all the players that they were able to retain that were of similar process of me of as mine, where they were Mexican American. They played club, they played academy, and etc. The U.S. at least with their developmental system, they gotta have at least a semifinal
Yeah.
appearance.
Keep in mind that they're in Group C where they have Uruguay, Panama, and Bolivia. So that's a highly accessible group. Uruguay probably the one that they're gonna have to fight for that
They're
top
gonna have
spot.
to which Uruguay is. I mean, I've said it. I've told this to you in private before. Uruguay is the best team in the world right now because you play Argentina, which they beat Argentina. They beat them in Uruguay. You beat the number one team in the world, and you beat the number four team in the world, which is Brazil. If you beat 1 and 4, where does that put you? Does that not put you at number one? Which for me, I think Uruguay is the best team in the world in terms of team, in the sense of what it is to be a team in rhythm, not rhythm like by player, but rhythm how they build up as a team together and they come
Like
back to the
as
so
a
well
collective,
together.
basically as a collective.
Yeah, as a collective, they're the best collective team right now, and they just do it so well. With this coach, you know
Marcelo Bielsa.
Marcelo Bielsa. Sorry, I only had his first name. I was thinking Marcelo Bestia, but I held out on that one. But Marcelo Bielsa, which was actually offered by his agent towards to the Mexican Federation. Well, what Marcelo Bielsa asked, which would he asked for Uruguay, he has to have direct. How do I say this? Direct influence, like to be able to oversee the U15, U17, U19, U21, and U23 development because Mexico had missed out on the Olympics. So he asked for these things post Tata Martino, and the FMF didn't want to give him that much power. He
Hmm.
wanted a 6-year contract, to cover the World Cup and a little bit more. He literally wanted to go through a from 0 to 100 process with Mexico, but that didn't benefit the federation because he would have taken out Ochoa, he would have taken out Henry Martin, he would have taken out every player over the age of 30 that wasn't in Europe performing. And this was literally his thing where he would take, well, what was 2022, 2023, 2024 as a process to play young players because his ideology is if you get a 20-year-old who has potential, by the time he turns 23, 24, he'll be able to perform for you at a high level.
Hmm.
And if he has direct influence of the Liga MX, which is in the Liga MX terms, he would be able to not control, but influence how many players were able to leave to Europe, which is what he's doing at Uruguay. And the FMF didn't want that because they would lose. They would. The FMF is the best federation at making quick money, but not long term money, which is what the US wants to make. They like making long term money. They see the bigger picture. The FMF would rather take 2 million today than to take 20 million in 5 years,
Yeah.
and that's the difference between the FMF and the US. And the thing with in Copa America is that Copa America is complete pride. Obviously, CONMEBOL comes to make money, but the national teams, Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, all these teams come to win it. They want it because the Copa America is such a disputed tournament that they want it. They just want to win it.
It's such a historic tournament. Like even, I mean, the likes of Mexico has played it countless times before, and unfortunately, we haven't been allowed to. I don't know the exact reason why. I'm sure you probably know.
I mean, it was just So the thing is, we've had 10 participations in Copa America. We've had five with our starting national team and five with our B team. The two times that we've made it to the final, obviously we went with our A team. It was a time with Hugo Sanchez, we lost to Argentina, and another time we lost to Bolivia, which was because it was at Bolivia. So I mean, it's just home field advantage is a key part if you know of Bolivia's history. It's just the altitude is so crazy that they'll outrun you. They'll outrun you and they defend well. And that Bolivia team was actually, I mean, it was a solid team back then in the 90s. But I mean, we go from losing the Copa America final to Argentina, 2-1. Then we lose the Copa America final to Bolivia 1-0. And then we fast forward to 2016 where we go again with our A team. Because in 2015, we go with our B team and we get knocked out in the group stage. In 2016, we go with our A team because we tied to Chile in 2015 3-3. In 2016, we go to Copa America and we lose 7-0
Oh, I guess Chile. I remember the game.
against Chile. A team that with our B team, we tied 3-3. Like, what is. Do these players not have pride?
I don't
Like,
know.
did they forget so fast about what happened? And it's just the Copa America is in a sense it's a tournament where it's so beautiful because you see the how each national team develops. Like, oh, this team did so good in the Copa America. Let's see how they do in the World Cup, like we did with Argentina. Argentina did crazy in the Copa America. Let's see how they did in the World Cup. They won the Copa America, they won a World Cup, and in between there, they won a trophy. I think it was like La Finalissima or something like that.
Yeah,
It was more of a two-headed disputed trophy only. And I mean, just if you're looking at the Mexican Federation, it's just I don't even know if Mexico can make it to quarterfinals playing like this with these players. If you
because
all
I feel like that's what's expected right now for both the U.S. and the Mexican national team. That you have to at least reach the semifinals.
for prior to this Nations League performance, I told you that Mexico was obligated to make a semifinals in the Copa America, and I still hold them to the standard just because of who Mexico is historically. They made this competition. They made it to the final twice. They've appeared in three. They've had three Copa Americas where they won their third place. Well, the third place, the medal, because there's no trophies handed out. You compete 10 times, and your top three half of the time, so 50% of the times, it just makes sense that you make another semifinal, even though it's longer down the line. And if you're unable to, then what are we? What would we go to the World Cup for? Or why would we have the World Cup? Should we just exit the World Cup? Would we be the first national team to, terminate our bid?
I don't know. At that point, like
This Nations League is to prepare for the Copa America and for the World Cup. Why do we have Henry Martin and Memo Ochoa? Like, why?
by the time the World Cups come around, they're gonna be like 30. Henry Martin would be like 33, 34, and then Memo Ochoa would be like what 30, 40, 40, about 40
40, but
actually.
he's already 40.
38, turning 39. So he'd be
I
like
mean,
40, 41. Like, why are you still playing these players? So yeah, that's regarding the Mexican national team. Now the
I
US
have
team,
I
they
have
have a higher
I have
ceiling.
uncles younger than Memo Ochoa. I have uncles younger than Memo Ochoa. Like, bro, like these are like how are you there?
I don't
My
know.
my my uncle plays better than you, bro, and his knees don't work, bro.
That old story about about every uncle, bro. Every uncle, every family has that one uncle.
Every family has that one
But
uncle in the third division for 2 weeks.
that's where they were gonna make it pro, bro. But anyways, moving forward, like I mean, I don't know what my expectations now are for the Copa America. I mean, for the U.S. team at least, I think that they should be aiming for that semifinal because you're at home, you have the home field advantage, and I guess I mean you have just some great quality. And now for Mexico, after kind of being humbled, if you make it to semifinals, it's kind of like a miracle at this point. If you're a
Yeah,
Mexican team fan, because you have a group with Ecuador, who's not an easy task. Venezuela, not easy as well, and Jamaica made it difficult for the U.S. men's national team. I mean, you want to come out first. You're expected to come out first, but if you come out first, you're going to be up against probably the likes of Peru, Canada, Chile, or Argentina, and I mean, you just don't have confidence. I wouldn't have confidence playing against any of those teams. Maybe Canada, but Canada have already beaten us. So
I mean,
I don't know.
the good thing is the thing that I like and the thing that I love about this U.S. result was that we saw what players should not be there, and that if we see these players again again in the Copa America, a lot of a lot of Mexican nationals or U.S. born Mexicans will stop going to the stadium, or they'll go to the stadium just to scream, just to yell
Yeah,
the chant, and for the
yeah.
FMF to be penalized.
I
And
hope he's.
I hope they give them a hefty penalty where it's to the point where we have to play well, or these people are going to keep
Doing that. Yeah.
making us get penalized, which is like I said, sadly the only way that these people, well, not these people, these fans have a direct impact in the FMF because we could say, oh, like why is Henry Martin starting? Why is this starting? We could say all we want all over Twitter, but FMF doesn't care. They're still laying back in their suites, counting up the bills that they made, that you paid for, and it's something that's detrimentally just depressing to some point, because how is it that a country so passionate with football can't see their team reach a quarterfinal in the World Cup?
That should
You
be.
know, I have like does FMF not think like some of us? I know for a lot of people it's not that deep, but some of us have lost our grandparents. Some of us have lost, our great grandparents who even they weren't able to see Mexico become World Cup champions. Where there's been big fans all over Mexico that saw, Hugo Sanchez play, where they saw that 1970 World Cup where they dreamed of Mexico becoming World Cup champions, and they just never got to see it. Not because there wasn't quality in Mexico, or not because there wasn't this in Mexico, just because of the corruption, of the greed. And everybody since they're a kid, they dream with seeing their country become World Cup champions.
Mm,
And FMF has stolen that possibility from so many Mexican teams, from so many Mexican teams, Mexican families, just the whole Mexican people in general. And it's just so depressing because my grandpa died without being able to see Mexico become World Cup champions. And I remember my grandpa's words when we beat Germany in 2018. He said, "Por fin se nos dio." He said, "Finally, it was given to us." Because my grandpa saw Mexico knocked out in 1986 by Germany. He saw them knocked out in '98 by Germany as well. And him just seeing that Mexico finally beat Germany was some type of relief to him. And it's just sad that he never got the chance to see Mexico win a World Cup,
yeah, or go farther.
even go
Eh,
further.
yeah,
Even the semi-final.
there's a lot of change that needs to be done, and that'll definitely be a topic where we can really dive into the corruption in FMF, and then we can also do a video or a podcast where we talk about the good that's been done in the U.S. men's national team and the system that's been in place for the U.S. men's
Yeah,
soccer federation as well. But we'll say that because those are heavier topics, and obviously we're already kind of like running on
yeah.
time. But
Let me just get this
thank
last
you.
one out. Let me just get this last one out. This last little bit. So Alvaro Morales, he speaks on this topic. He says, el ADN de la América le dio el triunfo a la selección mexicana. So the DNA from America, the Club America, gave this win to the selección mexicana, which was the win against Panama. So did la ADN de América le da la derrota hoy? Can I say this little bit in Spanish?
Yeah, let's try to say it in English.
I'll translate it after, but dirigiéndome a Álvaro Morales, no sé si lo verás, no sé si lo ves, o ni sé que explote, pero tú dices que el ADN de la América le dio el triunfo a la selección mexicana. Entonces hoy el ADN del América le da la derrota a la selección mexicana, teniendo a Ochoa, canterano del América, Jorge Sánchez, canterano del América, Edson Álvarez, canterano del América, Henry Martin, jugador activo del América. Teniendo todos estos jugadores presentes en el partido hoy, el América le dio la derrota, porque en 2005-2006, cuando Chivas era cantera de la selección mexicana, no pasaba esto. So in summary, what I said, directing me to Alvaro Morales, was that he says that the Club America DNA gave them the win versus Panama. So they're having these players, Ochoa, which came from the U team from America, Jorge Sanchez, who as well came from the U team of America, Edson Alvarez, who came from the U team of America, and Henry Martin, who came from the U team America, which were players who all started this game. Are they the reason that they lost? It's just a question for Alvaro Morales.
So if he's listening,
So if he's
maybe
listening, I'm for sure
maybe.
gonna clip this post. Let's see what we could get. But
No, honestly, we probably should. We'll put that. We'll put that one on our Instagram reels, guys. Keep a lookout for that one.
yeah, for sure. I mean, but in conclusion, that's all I have to say.
In conclusion, disgraceful Mexican performance. United States, I applaud you because you guys are doing an amazing job.
The
And
U.S. only.
you guys make me proud to be an American. The Mexican team, I'm sorry, like you guys are making me kind of ashamed of being Mexican, but I love my Mexican roots. Don't get me wrong. But anyways, Tomas, thank you so much.
Yeah,
This
thank
is
you
where
too.
we close up. Thank you for joining. Thank you to anyone that's listening. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you. Support your small content creators because one day we're gonna make it big. I'm manifesting right now that we're gonna be at the Copa America. We're gonna be at the World Cup in 2026. Who knows? Maybe even 2030. And we're gonna make it big. CharlaFootball. Once again, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to follow us on all social media platforms such as TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, especially if you want to see us face to face besides just the audio on Spotify. But yeah, thank you guys. Bye.
But